Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. So of course, in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week, because at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so you have a chance for your comment to be featured. And of course, I also do have a Kickstarter going on for my book, The Dancer. It's about a dancer slash assassin, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. This is the penultimate issue, so you get to catch up and also get geared for the finale of the book. Now let's jump into this week's comics. I had a pretty average size haul with 12 books, and number 12 for me was Love Everlasting issue 1, a book I kind of got on whim. I haven't read a Tom King book in a while, just because usually his storytelling usually isn't for me, but the art books I've enjoyed from him, like Mr. Miracle being one of my favorites, and of course Vision. So I was like, all right, this is a creator-owned book. I've never read a creator-owned book from him, so maybe it's a different vibe than like his Batman or his Superwoman or Supergirl. And honestly, with this, it kind of has a similar vibe of obviously the depressed storytelling, but I also don't love his female characters a lot. I feel like they're always driven by the male story, and even though this is literally from the point of view of the woman, she doesn't really feel like she has much agency and is very dedicated by the male storyline. And I just didn't really feel her vibe and like her as a character. The story is a romance, and that was another reason why I picked it up, because I'm like, oh, we rarely get romance stories, and this is from different timelines and kind of different points of view, and I just don't feel like it worked out in this one, even though I think the artwork really brought back some old school romance storytelling in comics. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 12. Moving on to number 11, which is Batgirls issue 9, a book that I do pick up because I like these characters, but I feel like isn't particularly for me or written for me. It still feels very all ages to me, and I feel like the character moments don't get to shine as much. There's a lot of just going through the motions of saying, okay, we have to defeat this villain. And the moments that do shine in this book usually are when you kind of have these slice of life moments, but we don't really get enough of it, and it doesn't really drive a character arc. And that's something I feel like that's missing with this book. But I do feel like the artwork has improved. We've been seeing a lot of different styles of art, and I feel like in the recent issues, this is the style I like a little bit more for Batgirls. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Jane Foster and the Mighty Thor, issue 3. A book I love the first issue, and I love this character, I love this creative team or this writer, and I feel like the art is not as strong as previous volumes of Jane Foster, and another thing that hinders this book, and I would say the previous Jane Foster's runs, is that it's not ongoing, and I truly wish that we've been able to get a little bit more of a character story with Jane, because I feel like it's very much going through the motions of, okay, I have to save Thor or save Odin's son, which is not a bad story at all, but I don't feel like there's those moments to really, really progress the character and have her have a beginning, middle, and end. I feel like it is treading water of things we've already seen with Jane Foster. So overall, giving this one 2.5 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is Miss Marvel and Wolverine issue 1. I have to say I wasn't expecting much from this book, besides just getting a Miss Marvel book, which I'm excited for and love seeing more of the character. But I think, again, it goes back to what I was saying about Jane. It's a shame that these type of characters don't have ongoing books right now, and they keep being pushed to the side to have these miniseries instead and not really get progression in their actual character arcs. And this is a prime example of that. This is a fun story, and obviously they're using the character because she has a TV show that was popular, but it's not actually moving the character anywhere. She doesn't really have an arc here. It's just her teaming up with really the X-Men. It's not even Wolverine. He's in it, and I guess he has a main part of it, but it really is the X-Men, and they have the fun adventure, and then it's over, and then they say, hey, Moon Knight's next, cool. And I'm not saying it's a bad story. I actually think it was fun, and the artwork is really strong for this book, but it also just kind of feels forgettable and kind of a throwaway. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is the last issue of Naomi. So this is Naomi season 2. I don't know if we're going to get more Naomi, and that's a bit of a shame, because it definitely leaves us on a cliffhanger, and I don't really know what Bendis is going to be doing at DC Comics, if he's doing anything else, so I'm a little scared with the show being canceled that Naomi will be shelved for a while, but I like the story. Honestly, I like the artwork probably the most for this book. The artwork is just drop dead gorgeous, and I like the ending the most. I like seeing where is Naomi going. I thought the epilogue aspect was really good, but I don't quite care about the other planets as much. I like where Naomi is in this town as this I don't want to, this, I would say Superman type character, right? She has this this otherworldly story as she's kind of living in this small town. And I like that aspect and I like that contrast. So when you get into more of the space adventure, I feel like you lose that a bit more, and it definitely leaned more into that this issue than what I think makes this book special, which is her supporting characters and her interacting as a normal, just teenage girl who happens to be from another planet. So overall, there's definitely moments that I liked in this, but I don't think it was a mind-blowing conclusion, especially for us not knowing where Naomi's going next. So I'm giving that 3 stars, and that was number 7, I believe. That was number 8. So moving on to number 7, which is Superman, Son of Kal-El, issue 14. And this issue does move the plot a bit more, or I would at least say the characters a little bit more, because the plot is still not something I enjoy. I'm not really enjoying the truth aspect of things. It's a little boring to me, but I like seeing a little bit more from Jay and trying to develop him a little bit more, so he's his own superhero, and we get to see his mom in the end of this issue. So I feel like we're learning a little bit more about him, which I think is important to develop this relationship a bit more. So I enjoyed those aspects, even though I feel like it was pretty surface level. But I want to love this series, and I just like it okay. And I hope it does end up becoming an even better series, especially because the artwork, I think, for this issue was just okay. I thought it was passable, but it's not out of this world artwork. It's just a kind of middle of the road book right now. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Parker Girls, issue 1, a book I was really looking forward to just because I love Terry Moore's work, and I wanted to see what a story would be from the point of view of Parker Girls, because this is a set in a group that we saw a lot in Strangers in Paradise, but it was always as a secondary force or a secondary character. So now we're actually seeing them as the main character. And my criticism about the book is probably that it's very similar to Serial. So as the previous series that Terry Moore had, it's this detective story with one of the characters from Rachel Rising, and it's very similar here too. It's a detective story, someone dies, and there's all these mysterious characters that we're going to learn about. But the reason this is a little higher, and I think the surprising bit that was a little higher, is just like the newer characters they introduced sucked me in, like the scenarios they were in. There's this guy who could have easily been seduced by this kind of femme fatale character who I'm guessing is related to the Parker Girls in some way, and he's not easily convinced. He's like, yeah, whatever, I'm gonna leave. And it takes a couple of tries for her to like kind of break his shell, and once we learn what's been wrong with him, or if he's a liar or not, or what type of character he is, it was just interesting to get into his psyche and see a character who usually is a trope and very easily seduced by the femme fatale get a little bit more of an arc, and I thought that was cool. But I also wanted to see more of Tambi, and I wanted to see more of the other Parker Girls that we know and love. And again, I wish it felt a little different than the previous series, because that's something I enjoyed about Terry's work, is that every series has such a distinct flavor, and I don't know if this series has that yet. But the artwork is amazing as always, really nice black and white art style here, and it just fits the story, of course. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Captain America issue 3, a book that I've been pleasantly surprised by. I don't think I've ever passed an issue 1 for a Captain America book. Maybe some event books I've read, like the Secret Empire stuff I've read more of, but I never really read an ongoing Captain America book. I've never really been interested by the character, but I really like this story. I like the premise of digging a little deeper into the Shield. I like seeing his supporting cast members with Peggy. You get some really awesome Peggy scenes here, and of course Winter Soldier. And this is more of a point A to point B issue, but still you dig deeper into the plot, and you really again get some interesting scenes with Winter Soldier and Peggy that makes this issue. And the artwork is just drop dead gorgeous, from the really deep coloring to just a great action in this issue. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, this is a little higher than it has been, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 7. And with this issue, we get to see honestly some good progression, and it's been a while since we've gotten some progression from Spider-Man now that we're done building up to issue 900. And I really enjoyed the Vulture story where he's kind of painted as a murderer, and his granddaughter's like, well, I don't want to be near you, and bye, pretty much. He's like, oh, that's the only person I have. It's the only person that makes me want to feel good. I'm going to go get Spider-Man because he destroyed my life. And I thought it was a really interesting new angle for Vulture. I was like, all right, cool. We're introducing new layers to a character we've seen a billion times with Spider-Man. And then you get a little moment between Mary Jane and Peter. It goes absolutely nowhere. But I like the dynamic between Norman and Peter. I think that's really fascinating. And again, a new layer that we haven't seen from the two characters. Miss Marvel's here for some reason. I don't know how she's going to be involved, but I never say no to Kamala Khan. I'm curious to see why she's here, especially because obviously she's a character that's compared to Peter Parker a lot because they're both fellow neighborhood heroes. The artwork is okay. I'm not a John Romita Jr. fan, but you kind of get used to it. So the art's there. And there's some interesting, I guess, paneling that is chosen here. I don't know if it always quite works, especially that Vulture scene where you have to like turn the book sideways to read. But you know, I thought this was a better issue than what we've been getting. I think we get a little progression, some interesting progression. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Power Rangers issue 22, which is another book that's kind of gearing up to a big legacy number, the end of Ryan Parrott's run. And honestly, there's some really good point A to point B moments here where we get to see a little bit more of the expansion of the Omega Rangers and what that means for the mythos of Power Rangers. But most importantly, you get a really interesting arc with Jason where he dies, it seems like. I don't know if we could call it a death, but he is reincarnated as this kind of evil zombie version of himself. And I thought that was a really cool twist on Jason, and you're questioning, well, where is this going to go? Then you get to see an older version of some of the other characters, like their child, we'll call them. It's not really their child, but they're the person they're taking care of. She's older now, and it's like, oh, cool. How did that happen? And you know, she's been growing up, but how did that happen so quickly? How are they going to be involved? And yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting plot points that are introduced here, and I'm curious to see where they go next. And the artwork is just amazing. Coloring so good for this, and it's just bright and vibrant and anime-esque, which really works for this book. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is the Deadliest Bouquet, issue 1, which I really enjoyed. I had already backed the book, and luckily I knew that this is going to be coming out at Image, so I didn't read the trade yet that I got from the Kickstarter, because I wanted to read it issue by issue, and then at the end say, hey, I have the collection now from Kickstarter, because honestly it was announced like pretty much after the Kickstarter that they were going to have single issues. And with this issue, we get to see a detective story between these, I would almost say, Charmed Ones sisters. They don't have magic, but they kind of have a vibe of the Charmed Ones from the TV show Charmed. And we get to see their very different lives, and they're almost slice-of-life lives. And you get a little peek behind the curtain that they had a pretty traumatic childhood that involved them learning how to use knives and fight, and almost have this like Hannah-esque backstories. So that was interesting. It all has to do with their mother who dies, so it's all a murder mystery. And I felt like this issue just did a really good job at introducing your main cast members who are all new and we don't know. And sometimes with issue 1s, they get so involved with the plot that they forget that we don't know these characters and we should like them. And this book does a really good job at making us like them and everyone feeling distinct. And the artwork just fits really well, even though it's cartoony. It fits for this kind of darker story. I kind of like the contrast. So overall, giving that 4 stars. I think my only nitpick is that because it was originally a graphic novel, the ending kind of felt abrupt to me as a single issue, but I still had a good time with this one. So like I said, 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, I think this is the first time it's been my pick of the week, but it's been in my top 5 a lot, and that is Punisher issue 5. And this one just moved me. You know, in the beginning, we get to see him and his wife running away from the Hand, and you're like, okay, let's see where this goes. But what really grabbed me was his backstory that we don't really get to see from Frank very often. And if we do, it's always from the point of view of the army. And here we get to see, you know, how he was as a child and how that dictates the story now, how he fell in love with his wife, how his friend died because he was too consumed with his future wife. And the artwork was just so good and gritty and just totally works. And that's most of the issue, to kind of give you this emotional pull to go to that Kurt story of like why he wants to save his wife so much and why he's so dedicated to save people, and why he feels like he's made mistakes and kind of has this survivor's guilt. So overall, the artwork's so good in the present, the artwork's so good in the past, and the story just weaves so well. And I never knew you could do something different with Punisher, and that's what I always want to see with a new run from a superhero book, is give me something that's the core of the character, but give me something new. And I think Punisher, this run has done a perfect job at that. Like, this is at the core who Punisher is, but we're seeing it from a different view, a different angle that only Jason Aaron could do and only these artists can do. So overall, I give that 4 stars, and that is my pick of the week. Let me know in the comments below what were your favorite comics of the week, and this week's viewer pick of the week was Batman, and here are some comments about that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.